Finally, I'd like to first offer some apologies and explanations. My voice is almost finished, as you can hear it, and it's very difficult for me. Secondly, yesterday was such a horrible day that I didn't have a chance to brush up on what my remarks were going to be, and I'm not fully prepared to properly endorse all the speakers. So my introduction of them will be short. Their fuller bios are included in the program, and I hope everybody can accept that. But most of the speakers, you're familiar with. Pardon? I haven't heard you yet. Good question. That was the one thing I didn't get done yesterday. I wanted to send the programs out to everybody who's registered, but I have to tell you, and you should know this, that the programs were all part of the post on my site, and where you buy the tickets, if you just go down, the whole program was there, all the speakers were there, and they're still there. So I wanted to send an update, and every 10 minutes the program was changing. See, something I printed it out. So it was all there. Okay? We done with the criticism?
No, forever.
Thank you for doing this.
Neither is real.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. I think we'll be hearing more from the IJMDC. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome you here to this historic event. The conference will be seen as the beginning of the end of the Hashemite kingdom, and hopefully the beginning of the Jordanian presidency of my friend Mudar Shahrat. I met Mudar shortly after making Aliyah some 8 years ago, and worked with him during those years to pursue and perfect his plans. He wanted to become president of Jordan because he wanted to serve his people, the Palestinians. Since we started marketing the conference 3 months ago, Khaled Al-Tawhi, a well-known right-wing Arab Zionist journalist, together with some prominent Zionist activists and journalists, waged a slanderous campaign against Mudar. And I don't know, some who follow social media, it was disgusting what was going on there. And so it's left some scars, and we're here today to show that we're onward and upward. On a few occasions, they said he was ambitious and saw this as a fault. This allegation reminded me of Mark Antony's speech in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Mark Antony, when addressing the crowd at Caesar's burial, with the consent of the murderers, had to tread carefully. I substitute Khaled here for Brutus. Yet Khaled says he was ambitious, and Khaled is an honorable man. How can you achieve anything without ambition, I said. Without ambition, you can't reach great heights. So such a ridiculous comment. But Mark Antony continued, ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Throughout the last 10 years, Mudar exhibited such sterner stuff. He stood up to the king, Abdullah, on many occasions, and he had to flee from Jordan for his pains. He applied for and received asylum in Britain, plus a safe house to keep him safe. Just recently, he discovered that safe house had been made public, and he had to rush off to the police to have a new safe house. This is a very treacherous business that he has been applying himself on. Mudar was tried and convicted in absentia by King Abdullah and sentenced to life imprisonment for slandering the king. During his exile, Mudar earned a PhD in London, and he's now working on his second PhD. And by the way, I might mention that one of his masters was earned in the United States. And he's very cosmopolitan. He's lived in the States. He's always lived in England. He's lived in Jordan. And when he was in Jordan, he worked for the American Embassy and got to know the entire intelligence community by virtue of him working for Condoleezza Rice and others. And he was an Arabic interpreter and a very versatile guy. King Abdullah, on a number of occasions, offered him substantial bribes. And every time, Mudar turned them down. And presumably, he liked living on welfare better and keeping his integrity. So he turned down serious money, like $500,000, $1 million, to give up the fight. A couple of weeks ago, after the launch of our marketing campaign, the King Abdullah declared war on us. He published a rant in the Jerusalem press attacking the conference and those involved. And the entire, the Jordanian press, and the entire Arabic press carried this article, and everybody was talking about it. So this translation isn't the greatest, but I want you to hear how frightened the king was of this this infant operation, some might think. Obviously, we're a lot bigger than some people think we are. But here's what the king wrote, as translated. There are Jordanians participating in the conference, and the state must take all deterring measures, and the Jordanians' state of mind must be firm in reacting to these pro-coup stances, and to punish those taking part, and also recall the Jordanian ambassador and take all legal and diplomatic measures to stand in the face of these major changes to come, which target the national security, and put together a full program on purpose aimed at creating a perfect picture for the reader and the mind of the Jordanian state, as well as the consciousness of the Jordanian citizen, who, by the way, shall never tolerate anyone touching our national security and is willing to give away his blood and soul for that. That was, I took it out, it's hard to understand it, I could have, maybe you can, I couldn't, but you can see the threat, you can see the punishment that was there. Yet, it's only right that the king abdicate. After all, 75% of the Jordanians living in Jordan are Palestinians, and the rest are Bedouin. Also, there's a component that at one time was represented as being 1.6 million of Syrian refugees. They're all leaking back into the safe zones in Syria, and so they're down to 500,000, and ultimately they'll be all gone. Returning to Mark Antony, was this ambition? Yet Khaled says he was ambitious, and sure, he's an honorable man. At least that's what most people thought of Khaled. But here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to praise him now? Enough with Shakespeare, I couldn't resist. Luckily, I'm not here to bury Mudar, but to praise him. I remember when Mudar was organizing the Jordanian Opposition Coalition 3 or 4 years ago. He drafted the platform upon which he would stand and submitted it to me for my comments. My concern was that his platform would be well received by Israelis. I wanted it to include the right of all Palestinians to return to Jordan, and he wanted it to include an invitation to Israel to help the Jordan economy. On the other hand, Mudar had to take this platform and present it to his potential coalition partners and get them to sign on to the program. So he was torn. If he made it too pro-Israel, he might lose some of them, and so He negotiated this path through his persuasiveness, and I can tell you, very persuasive in leadership. He managed to get their support for his vision of a democratic, secular state with the right of return. One that would live in peace and harmony with Israel, as Emir Faisal proposed a century ago. And he managed to get the coalition to accept a democratic, secular state. That's huge in the Arab world. And credit to him. I remember specifically his excitement when he got a 1 million-man Bedouin clan to join the coalition. One of their leaders, Abed al-Mala, is here today representing them to participate in the program. And I brought him here from the U.S. where he currently lives, quite fearful for his life when he returns to Israel. His life is in danger. That I can tell you from all the tracking that we have done. The platform was published in August 2015 and is available on my blog, Israel Pundit, for all to read. It's about a 15-page program that you can get into all the nitty-gritties of what everybody agreed to. Over these years, Mubarak planned to take power by leading some kind of insurrection. The right circumstances never presented themselves, due in part to Obama's desire to support the king and support the Muslim Brotherhood who supported the king. And you may be aware that the king is very close to Qatar. Both Qatar and the king support the Muslim Brotherhood, and they create an anomaly in terms of the Arab states who are, the Gulf states, who are declaring the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization, who are boycotting Qatar. So there's a real division between the Arab Gulf states and Jordan. With the election of President Trump, everything changed. Mudar and I both saw the same possibility. If only we got Trump to endorse what we dubbed the ultimate alternate solution, then the rest would be easy. We reasoned that installing the Jerusalem Occupation Coalition headed by Mudar in power would ultimately lead to the eradication of the Palestinian Authority and UNRWA, which is the bonus. We thought the logic of our solution was so compelling that President Trump wouldn't be able to resist it. After all, he said he wanted to achieve the ultimate deal, and that's where the word ultimate comes from his own reasoning. Out of that realization, this conference was born. And I might mention, there are many, many more people who have registered who are not here yet today, so the audience should grow. The morning is dedicated to providing you with the facts, including an expose of the real King Abdullah and what he's all about. He is often portrayed as a friend, but in reality, he is the enemy of both the Palestinians and Israel. And we see lately so many things, and one of our preachers, Preacher Abraham, is going to nail him to the wall in your presence. I was happy to tell you that Danny Alon was going to be the keynote speaker. 2 days ago, he said he would grace our conference, and last night he wrote and he said he couldn't make it. But, not to be disappointed, we have something special. We have the bad boy of the Knesset, Oren Khazan, who is here, and he is going to talk. But to make that more interesting, he is going to be joined in his talk with Abed Amala, and there's going to be fireworks. And so I'm going to say go to it, how your heart's desire, so that should be fun. He will be followed by 3 panels in the afternoon, The first deals with the historical background, bringing us up to date. The second deals with what Israel can do to capitalize on the Jerusalem Opposition Coalition coming into power, what our role is. And the third panel is about what kind of government Mudar and his coalition are proposing. Thank you for coming and taking an interest. Now, the panel, first panel, is not all here. I'm told that MK Yehuda will be here shortly. We're going to start anyways. And luckily, we have two illustrious people. First, Aryeh Eldad. He has been married to this cause as long as I've been in Israel. And he's had conferences of his own. And I think he worked with Rabbi Benny Alon, deceased now. So Aryeh Eldad is a wonderful first speaker based on everything he has done before and what he knows. Aryeh? To the Weizmann-Faisal Agreement of 1919, which is almost 100 years old today. And I just thought I'd give you some historical detail on that agreement to start with, and then we'll move on to the Churchill era, which will shock many of you, what Churchill did to the Zionist cause. But the Faisal-Weizmann Agreement was a political accord, was signed on January 3rd, 1919 by Weizmann as head of the Zionist organization and by Emir Faisal, who at the time was king of Syria. Important guy, important document. Under the terms of the agreement, the Arabs would recognize the Balfour Declaration and would encourage Jewish immigration and settlement in Palestine. That was their commitment. Freedom of religion and worship in Palestine was set forth as a fundamental principle, and the Muslim holy sites were to be under Muslim control, so you know where it comes from, and the Zionist organization, and the Jewish sites obviously under Jewish control. The Zionist organization promised to look into the economic possibilities of an Arab state and to help it develop its resources. That essentially was the deal. We'll welcome you, you help us with the economy. In the words of Faisal himself, we Arabs look with the deepest sympathy on the Zionist movement. Our deputation here in Paris is fully acquainted with the proposal submitted by the Zionist organization to the peace conference, and we regard them as moderate and proper. We will do our best, insofar as we are concerned, to help them through. We will wish Jews a most hearty welcome home. I look forward, and my people with me look forward, to a future in which we will help you and you will help us, so that the countries in which we are mutually invested may once again take their places in the community of the civilized peoples of the world. Now that's really a hearty welcome. And it's a welcome that Mudar is hoping to usher in today. One should keep in mind from that document that I read that the Balfour Declaration that he was referring to considered Palestine to include Jordan. And he is saying we'll accept the original Palestinian, or the mandate, which covers both what's Jordan now and Israel. So that's the first thing to point out. The Weizmann accepted the requirement that Muslims would control their holy places. The holy places were never defined. obviously, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is a holy place. But that doesn't mean the Temple Mount is a holy place to the Muslims. It isn't. They can look upon the mosque and a perimeter around it as their province, but there's no basis in that initial agreement to deny Jews the Temple Mount in general as their own holy place. That's a huge problem. And that's a distinction you should keep in mind. There's no reason why they can't be limited. And even one of your speakers talked about how every time they want to have some kind of riot, it's all we have to defend the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's never we have to defend the Temple Mount. The difference. And that difference is important. That particular agreement, by the way, was not accepted by other Arabs, nor was it accepted by the British administration. 3 years later, after that agreement died a death, never really came to life, Jews were denied settlement rights in Transjordan thanks to Winston Churchill. Churchill was appointed Secretary of State for the Colonies in 1921, and he was only there for a little over a year until his government fell. So he had a very short reign. But in that period of time, he brought out a white paper on June 3rd, 1922. So what did that white paper say? It redefined, and this is a horror, it redefined Jewish national home to be only a cultural or spiritual center rather than a state. That's how draconian that white paper was. And that created, over the years, a huge debate on did the Balfour Declaration mean a real state, or is a national home something different than a state, and whatever. He certainly fueled the fire in that white paper. That's number one. He also called for a limitation of Jewish immigration, and this is very well known, to, quote, the economic capacity of the country to absorb new arrivals, end of quote. Now, that condition, if you will, enabled the Brits to forever reduce immigration by simply saying that it is the economic capacity isn't there to handle war. So Churchill was responsible for enabling Britain to have a foothold on how to deny our settlement rights. That's Churchill. But Churchill went further. As was indicated, the British government, because Lawrence Arabia wanted to find a kingdom for Emir Abdullah at the time, and they decided that Transjordan would be the kingdom. Now, the Transjordan was already part of the British homeland. So, what happened was, on the ruse and trickery, Churchill, the Balfour Declaration, or the mandate, Palestine mandate, hadn't been signed yet. And Churchill inserted a clause in the mandate which itself expressed the fact that it was temporary, and it was expected it would only be there for 6 months by other things that he had said. That clause is the famous Clause 25, and Clause 25 that he inserted into the mandate suspended the right of Jews to settle in Transjordan. So no Zionist settlement project, anything to do with the purpose of the Balfour Declaration, applied to Transjordan. And he sugarcoated that, saying it's only 6 months. But at the same time, he was promising Abdullah it was permanent. Okay? Now, obviously, there was a lot of hue and cry for that initiative, also from Churchill. And but the white paper had one saving grace. It recognized that the Jewish community in Palestine should be able to increase its numbers by immigration as of right, not of suffrage. That's a huge issue. We had the right to settle there. We didn't need permission to settle there. And that's what that clause meant, that as of right, not of suffrage. So, in that regard, the Transjordan at the time contained about 77-78% of the entire mandate. And Colonel Meinershagen, when he got wind of this, stormed into Churchill's office, figuratively, and violently objected. And for those who know this history, Meinershagen was a Christian and a very good friend of the Jews in the Zionist project. Quite famous as a friend, no question about it. And this is what he said to Churchill. In my considered legal opinion, the state of Israel has a dormant right, or legal right, to Transjordan. So it's just sleeping, he's saying, which, however, cannot be exercised unless Jordan as a state disintegrates, which would allow Israel to reclaim historic Jewish territories of Gilead and the conquered kingdoms of Moab and Edom, all of which were included in the Israelite kingdoms of David and Solomon. So he was a Christian friend of the Jews who knew his Bible, and he knew that just on the east side of the Jordan River, it was a major part of the Jewish empire, if that's the right word, the Jewish, what's the right word? The Jewish presence, if I may. And speaking aside, I was talking to Natalie Matar and about the conference or whatever. She says, I can't support anything about relinquishing our Jewish claim to Jordan. That was her comment. And this is making reference to that Jewish claim. And I said, our plan doesn't require you to relinquish anything. At the moment, what it says, Israel signed a peace agreement with Jordan. It's Jordan. We're not asking to put a stamp on that agreement. Actually, Israel isn't being asked to do anything in order to fulfill the hopes and desires of Mudar of taking option. We have no job there. As a matter of fact, we should fight it because it's a death knell to the Jordan opposition that Israel should be supporting. It serves no purpose. So the optics of it are that our government and our people should be totally against this happening. That's our position. Now, so how come the Zionist organization signed this? Churchill forced Weizmann to accept the Clause 25 in the mandate by saying, if you don't accept the clause, we don't sign the mandate. That was the demand. So Weizmann decided that he really had no choice. He needed to get the mandate with or without Transjordan. And they accepted that clause, and they sent, after all, temporary, but Churchill is an honorable man, if he'll allow me. So that's how come. And it was only a month later that the mandate was officially confirmed, some Transjordan. It's very interesting to note that shortly thereafter, Britain, by the way, wasn't a member of the League of Nations at that time. And this is, I think, even before the mandate was officially confirmed, a joint resolution of both houses of Congress of the United States unanimously endorsed the mandate for Palestine, confirming the irrevocable right of Jews to settle in Palestine anywhere between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. Now, since so much today involves congressional resolutions, it's easy to get unanimous control of the resolutions when APAC is saying to you, we want you to sign if you want us to support us, and invariably we get 90-95% congressional support for anything that's good for Israel. But it's meaningless. Nobody acts on it. It's cheap to do it because it can cost you anything to do it, okay? Now, similarly with this, you can't take it to the bank. It's just a unanimous resolution. But in the congressional record that at the time this was being debated, with respect to the Arabs living in Jewish Palestine, the congressional record contained the following: that if they will not consent to Jewish government and domination, they shall, and domination is in a slavery type sense, domination is the rule. I think that's what's referred to by the word domination. They shall be required to sell their lands at a just valuation and retire to the Arab territory, which was assigned to them by the League of Nations in the general reconstruction countries to the east. Transjordan is to the east. So, as far as Congress was concerned, at least one individual put into the record that he thought that they should have to be required to sell their land at fair prices and emigrate to the east. But he went further. That if they will not consent to Jewish government and domination under conditions of right and justice, nobody's saying forced removal and whatever, or to sell their lands at just valuation, and required in their own country, they shall be driven from Palestine by force. This is American congressional discussion, and that's in the record, and that doesn't mean this the unanimous position of Congress. But I just wanted you to know that a sentiment exists in Congress, not a sole sentiment, that sometimes force is necessary. And that's not such a strange thing. In all kinds of major peace agreements, population transfer is a very necessary part. When you look at the Second World War, the amount of population transfers were enormous. It facilitates a settlement of the agreement. If you look at this, the division of India and Pakistan, similarly, there were millions that were moved to facilitate the new borders because they appreciated, as Martin Sherman pointed out, that if you want to have a stable state, you have to have stable people inside, sharing the same values and aspirations. And if you don't, it's eternal damnation. So, although the left, how can you do that? It's a necessary thing to achieve stability and peace. Now, but it goes further. In order to enable, to protect the American interests in Palestine, because as I said, they weren't in the League of Nations, and they didn't have any influence there, the U.S. entered into the 1924 Anglo-American Convention, in which the U.S. bound itself to the terms of the mandate. Now, a congressional resolution is one thing, but a treaty obligation, that's a whole different thing. Because obviously you can be signed, you can be sued by the other country if you're violating the treaty. The treaty is a real contract, and you can be sued. But more than that, if you're a beneficiary of a treaty, you can sue the government that's violating it. Now, as a matter of fact, in Canada, once again, people prepared a whole application to the U.S. Supreme Court in order to challenge the U.S. because they were violating the treaty obligation to uphold the mandate. Now, that particular movement didn't get off the ground, and I'm not up to date on why not, but it was significant enough that papers were drawn up to make the case that America was violating the terms of the mandate. You can think about that for a bit. As it turned out, Weitzman never gave up hope for Transjordan's reattachment to the Jewish national home. And I think one of the speakers mentioned was certainly Meiner's thought and talked about that idea. But the hope that if Jordan fell, it could obviously, we could reclaim our right, whatever. To me, that's fanciful thinking. But at the time that this was happening, they knew that Jewish rights were really being denied, so it was something of some value that it could be repatriated to the Jews. Wishful thinking, whatever, it was. As late as 1943, Weizmann was told by Clement Attlee, who became the Prime Minister of Britain shortly thereafter, that, quote, something should be done about allowing the Jews to settle in Transjordan after the war. And I think to myself, what Jews? That Jordan was a lot more crucial, but for the Holocaust, we lost almost half the Jews existing at the time, and the land would really have been of some value. In 1946, Jordan declared its independence. Now, I'm going to jump over a little bit of Jordan history because my friend Michael here is going to talk about the citizenship law in Jordan that was passed. But I just want to bring you up to the date in Jordan aside. As you may recall, last summer, a year ago summer, the GOP unanimously approved a pro-Israel platform at their convention in July 2016, which stipulated, quote, the U.S. seeks to assist in the establishment of a comprehensive and lasting peace in the Middle East to be negotiated among those living in the region. Very interesting, those living in the region, not between Israel and the PA. That's the essence of that factor. They weren't limiting the solution to a deal between Israel and the PA. And Donald Trump was in complete agreement with that final text. And both Greenblatt and Friedman were there when negotiations were taking place to pass that historic position for the GOP, which obviously, as you know, as the GOP is moving to the right, the Democrats are moving to the left. That's the reality we're in today. Now, when you look at that statement, gone was any reference to the Palestinian people, or to the two-state solution, or to the PA. These things don't get omitted by chance or by mistake. It's by design. And what Trump's advisors in the GOP were trying to do was to open up the door for all kinds of solutions. The ultimate solution, we might say. And now, along comes Ujar Safran, who is promoting the vision of Jordan as an Arab state and Israel to the Jordan River as the state of the Jews. And he intends to open up the doors to Jordan so that all Arabs currently called Palestinians could return to Jordan and be full citizens. Plus, he intends to open the door to Jordan so that Israel can fulfill Faisal's vision of the Jews aiding the Arabs in their economic development. His vision is like having a border between Canada and the United States. Totally, we do have our arguments, but totally friendly and positive and with respect. And I just want to say something about the right of return that he is proposing. And it will depend all on the lecture that Michael's going to give you about citizenship rights. But, well, maybe this will come after. I'll wait for his remarks, and maybe I'll have an additional comment. So it's my pleasure to introduce Michael to you, to give you a full understanding of what citizenship rights the Palestinians have in Jordan. Very key and very confusing to most people. I've never read an article that satisfied me on that issue.
Law in Canada for 20 years, then built up an international business before making Aliyah in 2009, and he kept making Aliyah for the last 15 years by being the editor-publisher of This Repugnant, a popular nationalist political blog. Ted Bellman. Wait, just one more second, Ted. You don't have to do this now. I will introduce Jeremy when it's his turn. Ted Bellman, take it away.
Quick question?
No. I too was interviewed, and I don't know how many people saw my interview, how many here? I was interviewed on Israel television in English, just 5 minutes. And the way it worked out, I managed to say everything I wanted to say in a nutshell. But sometimes when you're in interviews, if you go on too long in one part, you don't have time to do another part. This worked out fine. Now, what was interesting about the video, why I'm mentioning it, Mudar then got his people to translate and dubbed it in Arabic. And he started circulating it in Jordan. And he just told me yesterday, 100,000 people have seen this message. What we're doing, we are calling for a coup, nothing less. This is huge noise and news in the Arab world. And Madar, he monitors the Arab world and he sees how many newspaper articles, how many Facebook, how many whatever, that it's covered like it's the biggest story as you can imagine. The problem is, all the king's loyalists are commenting and trashing, but nobody who's yelling hooray is allowed to speak, because that's a death knell. So there's no opposite voice. So as Madar says, the fact that the total number of comments are so few tells us a lot. So I just want to share that that's the kind of fascination there is now. Basically, this plan, the Jordan Opposition Coalition, and the work that Madar and I are doing, is to, as I said before, to interest Trump in the solution. And I said this in the interview. So the Arabs are seeing, and one of the questions they asked me, why are you going to come to power? And I said that Mubarak was removed from power. It didn't require Congress to vote. It didn't require the Israeli public to agree. It is a pure executive action. That is the heart of what we are planning for and acting for. Is an executive action to, and it's all been planned out, as a matter of fact. Madar and his various people have already written a 15-page document saying how it should go, how it'll happen, and whatever. And so the word that I use, they're not going to get, America isn't going to strong-arm anybody, but in their fashion, we hope that they will enable it. And they will give the king his walking papers, make him, you have a choice, you can bow out gracefully or not. And Mudar, hopefully, will be installed. So this is not just an academic discussion. As I said to some other people, everybody's got a plan. Everybody's got a plan. And I said that for instance, England, I said, you're not even in office. It's going to take 2 years before, and it's questionable when you get in office. What are you going to do with your plan? We have action. We really believe that if we can move on this and convince the Trump administration to enable it, we're talking about before the end of next year that this will happen. This is real. And so I'm telling you, this is more than a discussion. And everyone is looking for the aftermath of the conference. And as a matter of fact, we put this idea on the map even before the conference. It's so talked about in the Arab world. So I just want to mention that. Now, if Mudar gets into power, then obviously they're going to have the law returned, and they're not going to actively go into the West Bank and say, come over to us. They're just passing normal laws where a person can go back to the country for which he has a citizenship. So the question comes up, what's Israel going to do once this is a scenario? So I worked together with another person, and I'm really proud of the work he's done. And he really knows what economic feasibilities studies are. And most of what I'm going to tell you, comes from him. And we spent many hours working this up. Now, one of the words that I use, we want to incentivize immigration. And Martin Sherman also has the notion of incentivizing immigration, and he wants to, in his words, offer $300,000 a family to emigrate where they want. And all kinds of countries would take them in, because far better than taking in a pauper or somebody who's a refugee and has no money. If people are coming in with 300,000, that is really to the ear of many countries who need that capital coming in. Now, the reason he is on board is because he recognizes we're only a part of his grander plan. That if we can start a process of people being compensated to go to Jordan, as far as he's concerned, it doesn't matter what country. Okay? Now, how do we do that? How do we incentivize it? So, let me give you some numbers and some ideas that I think will fascinate you as they fascinated me. I think Mike Weiss is here. That's one of the principals of the Israel, with Ettinger, they developed new numbers that Martin endorsed of how many Palestinians and fertility rate, stuff like that. Well, Mike is here to observe. There are, according to this, these three demographic people, 1,530,000 Arabs in Judea and Samaria, including right to the Jordan River. 1,530,000. That's all. That's an insignificant number compared to the number of refugees now in Syria. Now, there's roughly 400,000 in Jerusalem, which is a different kettle of fish because they've been given some rights and some have exercised, and many people who want to exercise and become citizens, Israel is now getting smart, and they're stonewalling and they're making it difficult for people to actually get citizenship, but they have all kinds of benefits. So it's a different category because of the benefits. So the total is 1,930,000 if you include the Arabs from Jerusalem. Now, the numbers show that there are 4.67 people per family, 4.67 Arabs per family on average. And the number of families then in Judea and Samaria are 330,000 families based on that number, okay? And there are 85,000 families in Jerusalem, totaling 415,000 families. Now, of these people, 800,000, which is roughly half, are refugees. In the sense, for whatever reason, they are indeed refugees, living in refugee camps, not part of normal Arab society in Judea and Samaria. And the reason they are in refugee camps is one reason, and that is that there will be pressure on Israel to allow the refugees from Israel to return. So Jordan, like all other Arab countries, doesn't want to normalize them. So that's why they're still refugees, okay? And these figures, okay. My friend, the feasibility studier, has calculated the cost of building housing in Jordan for this number of families, including university scholarships, pensions for the elderly, the infrastructural investment, and the Jordan water have been calculated, and I'm talking about a scientist calculating, not broad strokes, to be $15,000 per person to build housing for 415,000 families. Why? Because housing in Jordan, as I recall, is about 30,000 per unit, whereas the land component of an apartment in Israel is 150,000 per unit. So looking at the whole idea of resettling in Jordan, it is so inexpensive, we could give the houses away and wouldn't even blink. So talk about incentive. We can say, we'll build you a house you can have for free. Just emigrate to Jordan and you'll get benefits. This is how strong the incentivization is. Now, our calculations, 90% of the registered UNRWA refugees will take this offer and go to Jordan, 90%, because they have nothing at the moment. We took a rough guess, this isn't scientific, 35% of Jerusalem residents because they have the benefits, and 60% of the population would move due to exceptional financial support. We're talking about a total 1.3 million Palestinians who would move east of the Jordan River, based on a few things. 60%, surveys have shown 60% of the Palestinians in the West Bank are prepared to leave, for instance. That's without incentives.
What's the total amount?
But
What's the total amount? The global amount of
dollars, I'm coming to that. Now, that's a question. Hold your horses, okay? Now, these figures do not include, in economics, when you go to economics, you always learn, well, if you spend X dollars, there's a multiplying effect. And the X dollars that we spend is going to be multiplied maybe 2-3 times over, and it expands the benefit of the initial dollars that are spent. We haven't even calculated what's called the multiplier effect. Now, the demographic composition of Jordan will remain virtually unchanged from the current 75% of the Jordanian population is Palestinian. Mudarrites argue it's 80%. So I say 75%. If you add another 1.3 million, I think that was the number, of Palestinians from the West Bank to Jordan, it will increase the Palestinian percentage by only 4% to 79%. So changing from 75 to 79 hardly matters in terms of their national demographics. And the increase in the population per year over a 7-year plan would be just 2.4%. But it isn't 2.4% that's coming there and says, give me welfare, I need to be taken care of, and give me health care, What we want to do is build a city for 1 million people. So we create the employment for all these people. And the vast majority of people would rather work than do nothing. So our plan is to build city or city suburbs. And that construction will provide jobs and benefits and so on. That's part of the plan that we're envisaging. Now, sometimes you have to say, I think the number here, for some reason it's not here, I think I don't see, the total number, that's what you gave of, implies a direct foreign investment into Jordan economy of 19.5 billion, let's say $20 billion. That's the total investment for the total plan of moving out 1.3, giving them homes, giving them welfare, giving them everything you can imagine. It's only $20 billion. Now compare that with Sherman's plan, and he calculates the families, 300,000, we're talking, according to his plan, more like $200 billion compared to this 20 billion, because we're moving them to Jordan, a low-cost area, and the jobs are going to be what's employing all of these people. Okay, now, what does that mean to our economy? Still a lot of money in our economy. So this is what that means. First of all, if you go to the two-state solution, according to the numbers here, you've got to evacuate 100,000 Jews outside the settlement blocks. I think it's more like 150,000. The reason I say 150,000 is whenever anybody says you can keep the settlement blocks, they never identify what blocks they're talking about. And there's a debate, all that, there's a debate, and they never say what blocks. So even if all the blocks, and there's no consensus that will keep all the blocks, so it could be as high as 150,000. That's how I see it. Now, as you will recall, when 10,000 Jews were evacuated from Gush Katif, the cost was 10 billion shekels. Well, I had a debate yesterday, I thought it was $10 billion, and I haven't had a chance to do. Who knows, is it $10 billion or shekels? Anybody recall? Okay. Shekels, you think? If it's shekels, to move that many Jews out of Judea and Samaria because the Palestinians don't want them, and from my point of view, we would never leave them there, that would be criminal, and that's what Netanyahu puts, we can let them stay there. No, it ain't gonna happen. It's $55 billion that we would have to spend at the shekels to remove them, compared to the $20 billion to send the $1.3 billion to Jordan. The numbers are mind-boggling. Okay. There is just another issue I want, if you went to the two-state solution, nobody mentioned that today. What does Israel say about the return of refugees? No way, no how are any refugees coming into Israel. Basically the Israeli line. And I say, does that mean you want 1 million or 2 million refugees to come into the West Bank and add to the 800,000 that are there already? They can have a million-man march on the fence and tear it down and invade Israel, and then they're all living inside Israel. And let me tell you, if it ever came to discussion among Israelis and the government, they will agree. They don't want the return of them to Palestine, never mind Israel, because it would create such a problem for Israel, and they wouldn't get citizenship in that Palestine. They would be refugees forced to move back into Israel. That issue has not yet been debated in Israel about they shouldn't be allowed in at all. Now we have trouble. I didn't know I was going on so long, but it's so interesting. We have trouble when we talk about, it's going to be a militarized state. Yeah, really? How are you going to enforce that? And we have an agreement, you can't bring in refugees. Really? How are we going to enforce that? Like, it's a non-starter. You have to understand that. All of which argues for this plan of compensated immigration. Now, I had an Arab speaker, I don't think he showed up, but he wanted to, who came from Hebron area, and he was going to talk about whether Arabs would move to Jordan and what would take them to get to move to Jordan. And I just posted an article a few days ago by Bassem Aid, is it pronounced? Yeah. Wonderful writer, and he was saying what the Palestinians really want. Like, what was it? He said, what girls really want a girl. But anyway, he was saying what they really want. And they want what normal people want. They certainly don't want the PA government. They want a home, they want health care, they want jobs. Normal stuff. And they're not getting it where they are, especially the refugees under the PA. And they are more amenable to moving to Jordan than you might think. And I've had conversations with these people, and they agree to that. They say it's big. Now, another issue, and I just mentioned to my economic advisor, I'm happy to give away the 400,000 homes for nothing, because it's so small in the scale of things. But, and here's a political problem, how can you give free homes to 400,000 families coming to Jordan when everybody else doesn't get them? That's explosive. We don't have an answer for that, and we have to work on that issue. But it would be so divisive to society when all of a sudden these privileged few are getting homes paid for, no mortgage we're talking, paid for, while everybody else is struggling. So that's an issue, we don't have an answer for it yet, but this is, it's not the issue, I'm on a roll. Okay, now,
I want to move to Georgia.
Sounds so good. Oh, yeah, what is it called? Now, this is not how for GDP. This is a GDP of, I think, $319 billion, gross domestic product, $319 billion. So this represents, this expenditure of $20 billion represents 6.1% of the Israeli GDP. That's all. Not an insignificant amount, but not one that we can't handle. That's assuming we do it in 1 year. We're not going to do it in 1 year. If we do it over 7 years, it is less than 1% of the Israel's GDP if we had to pay for it ourselves, if nobody else was helping us with the expenditure. You wouldn't even notice it. But more important than that is that Moshe Feiglin analyzed that since Oslo, our internal defense has cost us over $1 trillion shekels. There are all kinds of costs involved in managing the status quo, which I don't think is sustainable because we're being labeled, our kids on campus are being attacked, whatever. We have to get rid of the status quo. So in any event, it's a very small number that we can manage. Now, okay, now one other thing. Does anyone know what our national debt is now? We're 62% of our GDP. 62%. Do you know that if we, Canada, compared to that 62%, is 84%, Germany 80%, the UK 89%, and get this, United States 104%. Their $20 trillion debt, thanks to Obama, is 104% of the US gross national product. And Singapore is 111%, beating out the US. Now, if Israel absorbs and pays for it by borrowing, we just go to 68% of our GDP as a debt compared to everybody else. So don't let anybody tell you we can't afford it. And I got one other issue. I'm playing on your time, but this is my stuff, and I never thought I was going to talk about this. But we also have a plan for Egypt. And I remember when 300,000 people were homeless in the last war, and I said, don't rehabilitate. Get them to emigrate. It's cheaper. And I was against rehabilitation. And so then my financial expert did a study, and he found out that homes in Egypt are half the price of the homes in Jordan. Half the price. So, and Egypt is 95 million population. So if you take 1.5 million Gazans and move them into Egypt, it's nothing. It's nothing. And you can give them free homes. It just shows you how much our government is not looking for, the obvious. That's the obvious. Why are we perpetuating these problems? So that is for Jordan. And I was going to talk to you about one other thing, but I'm not. I'm going to say my welcome, and it's been my pleasure to share it.
That was great stuff, and it's a note to the depth of thought that you and the rest of the folks have put into this, and that's what the conference is about. Just one point that Ted made that may have slipped past you, he said that if Palestine, the one we know today, would take in refugees, they would continue to be refugees, and that they would pine away for citizenship in Israel. Well, what did he mean by that? So when you travel from Gush Etzion to Hebron, on the left side there is a refugee camp called El Arub. But that refugee camp is under the Palestinian Authority. It's in Palestine. Why is there a refugee camp under Palestine? Is that weird? I thought that they got Palestine so that they wouldn't have to be refugees anymore. Great news, Palestine's here, right? No. They continue to remain refugees. Maybe it's in somebody's interest to continue to get paid as refugees, educate those people who are treated as refugees to be the next jihadists, or use it as a tool to blacken Israel's eye. But the fact is that the point that Ted was making is that influx of refugees to Palestine may very well continue. That name, refugees, and may very well get that status, be put into a refugee status, which by the way is a subjugated status, and continue to be the next warriors against Israel. Speaking of warriors against Israel, I'm going to introduce a warrior for Israel.
Hold on, I remembered one point I wanted to
It's your conference, you're the chairman. I mean, in other conferences I would shut you down, but it's up to you. Go ahead.
When Lieberman came out with the asinine plan to double the population in Qalqilya, I had a heart attack. What insanity. We should be moving the residents of Qalqilya out of the area, not adding to them, in utter insanity. Now, Martin Sherman points out, and Jeremy will have to come to the defense of this, how can you have sovereignty over Area C when you have all these cheese holes all the way through it? How do you do the border? What do you do with all that? So from my point of view, you don't say anybody anywhere in Jordan or in Palestine, we're going to send it. We have to focus. We have to empty out Qalqilya, empty out Tel Karm, empty out any of the refugee camps that are in our heartland, right in the middle, right adjacent to Highway 6. And we have to clean out all those Area B lands, and then leave Area C for the overtakers. And just to show you how magnanimous I am, I'm quite prepared to have the Palestinians in Hebron have an emirate, as proposed by Mati Kadar. They are wanting to be removed from the PA. They're ready for self-government. They want to live in peace. They can stay and be an emirate. Plus, all the cities that are on the ridge of Ramallah, of Shiloh, of Jenin. You know how far Ramallah is from Amman? It's 40 miles. We can make a highway. They can stay there. And they can travel highway to Amman. There are rational halfway houses. I just want to say that.
Right, okay.